the slides?
So just go to present.
Oh, share screen. Okay. Thanks. So clear.
Cool. Once you've shared your screen, I can add it to the stream.
Oh, okay. Present share screen.
Yep, there we go. Alright, I think I'll just wait one more minute or two just so people can get into the stream.
Oh, let me drop the link to the presentation. People. Oh, sorry. Let me just copy the link real quick. Wait, share, view only link, copy. Okay. Present, enter full screen mode. Got it. We're back. We're done. Okay, and that has some resources on it for folks.
Cool. I can send this out to everyone. With that said, I'm sure we're good to get started. Oh, I think you're muted.
That's true. Hello, everyone. I'm Kadesha, and I'm here from GitHub to talk to you all about becoming a developer advocate. Now, this is mostly going to be a AMA, so have all your questions ready about what it's like to be a developer advocate. I'll have a brief presentation on what is developer relations, how I got into advocacy, and what I do for work. And then I'm literally going to hand it over to you to ask me all the questions you want about getting into developer advocacy. So without further ado, let's begin. So, like I said, I am Kadesha, and I currently work as a developer advocate at GitHub, and I've been at GitHub since last June, so almost a year now, which is wild. I'm also a technical content creator, and that's kind of my gateway into developer advocacy. So I posted my very first short form video a little over 2 years ago, and then I used a culmination of my video and other content to land my role in developer relations, and specifically at GitHub. So I know we always see these little dances and little videos on TikTok or Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts, and we're thinking, wow, this is so funny. Oh my goodness, what are these creators doing? But behind the scenes, these creators are getting a lot of opportunities and a lot of job opportunities because they dare to publish content. So let's first define what developer relations is. So developer relations is pretty much a collection of strategies and marketing tactics that help companies to speak with and connect to the software developer audience. So essentially, developer relations is developer marketing, and we really don't like to call it developer marketing because marketing is quote unquote a bad word, but pretty much as developer relations advocates, we teach software engineers how to use a company's products. We take their questions, we create content based on those questions, and then we bring the feedback that we get from those engineers back to our company. So within developer relations, you have a large variety of roles. And so this can include product managers, program managers, community managers, content writers, and also developer advocates, just to name a few roles. And so I work as a developer advocate, and there are pretty much three overarching types of developer advocates within developer relations. Some advocates solely focus on community, some focus on creating content, and some advocates focus on doing product focused work. And so when it comes to community work, this can look like organizing events, doing live stream, managing the Discord or GitHub community, and talking to users and providing feedback. The developer advocate that is focused on content is one that write blogs, make videos, do courses, and they speak at conferences, and they do workshops and events that really engages the audience. And so I believe that the content-focused developer advocate is the most public developer advocate, but the product-focused developer advocate can be like a hidden gem behind the scenes because they're pretty much engaged in improving the developer experience. And so what developer experience is within developer relations, it's, like when you go to a repository and you pull it down and you open it up to contribute to it for the first time, but you're just like, oh my goodness, where's the README? There's no README. That's a part of developer experience. So developer experience has to do with what type of feeling or experience do I want developers to have when they are interacting with my product? And so that's what product-focused developer advocates focus on. So they may iterate or improve on documentation. They do coding samples and coding starters for you to use. They work on integrations within the product, and just all that work is to improve the overall developer experience. Now, most developer advocates do a mixture of all three categories within their roles. So like, for example, as a developer advocate at GitHub, I focus on content, community with some product, as explained here. So I create code samples, I write blog posts, I make videos, I do speaking engagements, I do workshops. Sometimes I do live stream, and I definitely talk to users and bring the feedback back to GitHub. So that's a culmination of all three different types of advocates within developer relations. But when you hear developer relations, I want you to think of, okay, so this is a overarching collection of strategies that engineers use to teach other engineers how to use a company's product. If you hear somebody say, oh, I'm a DevRel, that's not really what their role is. You can then ask them a question, oh, what do you do in DevRel? Developer relations is that overarching org, and then within the org, you have roles. So how do you get a job in developer relations? First of all, you need to know how to code. That is the very first and most important thing to be a developer advocate, because as developer advocates, we are software developers. So coding is a huge part of the job because you have to do code samples, you have to know how to explain code to developers. And if you really don't know how to explain what you're talking about, developers have a pretty strong nose and they will call you out and say, you don't know what you're talking about, I'm not going to listen to you. So you want to know how to code so you can establish that credibility. And in addition to knowing how to code, it's important for you to have some developer experience, like some professional developer experience, because this will teach you what it's like to be a developer. That way, whenever you're creating your content or teaching developers about whatever product you're advocating for, you have empathy because you understand where they're coming from. Another thing that you need to know how to do is to create content. So content creation is a big part of the job for a lot of advocates. And so it's important to know how to do it, like video, writing blog posts, speaking, and editing. And all this can be practiced by starting your own social media channel. That's definitely how I practice a lot of the video editing and the speaking and the writing. And like getting used to the platforms and getting used to being on camera and speaking to a mic and engaging with an audience virtually. Social media is a great place for you to build upon this content creation experience. And something else that's important for you to know how to do or know how to explain is building communities. Community is one of the biggest part of advocacy. And so in building and managing communities will definitely be a part of your job. And so this includes social media community in addition to like the technical community. So definitely don't discredit the experience that you can gain by building it on your own using social media. And so that's kind of how I got my job in developer relations. I use social media as an avenue to teach me how to be a developer advocate. And to be honest, I didn't even realize that I was doing advocacy work while, doing Instagram of all things. But because of the work I was doing on Instagram, I was gaining a lot of experience. So I learned how to create blog posts. I learned how to create engaging carousel posts, those things that you slide on the Instagram. I learned how to do podcasting. I learned how to edit videos, how to create videos, how to make them short and spicy so that it is engaging for people to do. I learned how to use Twitter. I learned how to use a lot of different platforms. And so because of that, I was invited to a lot of different events to speak and to teach people on different technical topics. So I've done the Women in Tech podcast. I've been on Elasticsearch. I did some stuff with B. Dougie. And so I met B. Dougie, who was the former manager of developer relations at GitHub. I met him back in October 2021. And so when I was going through the interview process with GitHub, he was already familiar with my work and he was already familiar with what I could possibly do as an advocate. I created a lot of videos that you can see on the lower right-hand corners. Those are some of the videos that I have on Instagram. And so pretty much I provide a lot of technical resources for people who is looking to pivot into the industry. And so I spoke on podcasts, YouTube channel, and at my very last job as a Lacework developer advocate, I was fortunate enough to be featured in Forbes, which is a big deal to me. I was just like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. I can't believe that little Instagram that I started about 2 years ago got me to do all these amazing opportunities. And so if you're looking to get into developer relations, social media is definitely one of the best places to start because it's free and it's self-directed. You can direct your content. And the thing is, when I started posting on social media, my very first post was about 2 years ago, January 2021. I remember posting hello world to the web, and initially nobody cared, nobody cared who I was because nobody knew me. I didn't get a lot of engagement. I didn't get a lot of comments, no likes, no shares, no nothing. But I remained consistent because I wasn't doing it for likes or engagement. I was sharing content on Instagram because I wanted to improve my own technical acumen and I wanted to improve how I spoke about technical topics to technical audiences. And so if you're going to start out on social media to build a content portfolio, definitely have your goals right, because when you just start out, nobody's really going to care about who you are. You just want to make sure that you stay consistent because consistency is what's going to help you to build up a wealth of experience. And so essentially, these items that I did on social media over the past 2 years served as my content portfolio. And so I took everything that I was doing on my own, and I took the audience that I built on my own, and I slapped it on my resume and I slapped it on my LinkedIn, so that both my resume and my LinkedIn can be developer advocacy focused. And so I put stuff on my resume like, I built an engaged community of over 42,000 technologists in under 2 years. That to me is an amazing accomplishment. And my audience is very engaged. They're very happy to see me. They love when I talk. And so I was able to talk about building community, content creation, podcasting, editing, speaking engagements. I was able to speak about everything that advocates do in my interviews because of the work that I did on my own. And even on LinkedIn, I branded myself as a developer advocate, and I put my Instagram experience on my LinkedIn, and I called myself a technology advocate and a digital content creator, because this is what advocates do. We're very public people, and in addition to code, we're also social beings, right? We love to be around people. And so if you want to use LinkedIn, which you should, to get a job in advocacy, definitely update LinkedIn with whatever experience you have. If you're at school and you run a club at school and you manage that community, that is tangible experience that you can pull from to show that you would be a good developer advocate. So one of the key things I did on my resume that got me a lot of callbacks was I put some content examples and speaking engagements on my profile. That way people can click the link, go straight to the content and see it. And there's an amazing platform called Polywork that developer advocates use to, I guess, pretty much track the content work that they're doing. And so I created a Polywork even though I wasn't an advocate yet. And I slapped all my content there. That way people had a one-stop shop way for them to see the work that I was capable of. And so this is pretty much how I landed my role in advocacy back in 2022. So I crafted my resume into bullet points and on my LinkedIn before applying to jobs. And then when I started applying to jobs, so the first time I started applying to roles in advocacy was back in November 2021. And so I applied to 18 jobs. I was rejected by 2 jobs. I never heard back from 3. And I was eventually hired by Lacework, a cloud security company, as a developer advocate, and I started in January 2022. So by May 2022, my team at Lacework was laid off. The entire team was laid off. I fortunately wasn't laid off, but I was moved to a different team. But I was already in the interview process at other companies before the layoffs happened, and I was so grateful that I decided to do that. So I started looking for roles, of course, and so I only applied to 5 jobs at the time because at that point I had about like 5 to 6 months of experience. And so in addition to my software engineering experience, which was about 2.5 years, my technical skills and my content creation, I knew that I was a pretty good catch for a developer advocate role. So I was very, 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 very super picky. And so I applied to 5 of my dream companies, and I got pretty far in the process with all 5 companies. And so by the time it was time to have like those last minute conversations, 2 companies had hiring freezes, but I was eventually hired by GitHub, who was my top choice. And I started back in June 2022. I was so excited and I couldn't even believe it. I was just like, what? You're offering me a job at GitHub? This is amazing. I was flabbergasted that the content work I did on my own with Instagram and even TikTok landed me a role at GitHub because of the portfolio that I built. And so one of the questions I get all the time is, okay, Daisha, what is the interview process like for developer advocates? So some companies keep their interview process similar to the software engineering process. So when I spoke with the recruiter at Google, she told me that the interview process is like this. There's a recruiter call, there's a technical phone screen that is 1 hour, there's a full panel of 4 individual interviews, which is 1 hour each, and it would have to be on site. There was a talk with the hiring manager, and then there was an offer. And so she told me that the whole process can take between 4 and 8 weeks. And I was like, that sounds pretty intense. I'm not going to do it. So I dropped out of the hiring process for Google. But when I interviewed for Lacework, the interview process for my developer advocacy role was talk to the hiring manager, meet with 4 team members just to talk to them, get to know the team. I had a technical screening over Zoom that was verbal. And then I met with the CCO. And then I had the job offer. My interview process at GitHub was I spoke to the recruiter, then I spoke to the hiring manager, then I did a technical presentation. So GitHub will send you like a list of things to do that you could present on, give you some options. I chose to do a technical presentation on GitHub packages. That went really well. Then I met with the director of developer relations, and then I got the job offer. So those are kind of some examples of what the interview process is like for developer advocates. It can be similar to the software engineering process and very intense as the software engineering process at some companies. But most of the companies I spoke with, there was a technical interviewing aspect to it, but it wasn't as intense as Google's process. It was pretty much just to make sure that you know what you're talking about and that you know the technologies that they use. So what do I do as a developer advocate? As a developer advocate, I do a lot of public-facing content. So I do content creation, public speaking, and then I gather all that feedback and I bring it back to the team at GitHub. Now, I personally love working as an advocate because I get to travel, learn, and teach all while on the clock. And I love teaching developers how to use technology and how to use GitHub, especially because I love GitHub. And so when it comes to content creation, I plan, film, and edit all the videos that I post. So anything you see online that has my face or my image on it, I did it myself from like planning to filming to editing to producing, all that jazz. So I post on TikTok, Insta, Twitter, YouTube, and then I'm getting into longer form YouTube video this year. I also write blog posts, and then I create code demos for you to use. And I am in a constant cycle of learning because at GitHub, we're constantly deploying new features to the features that we have, or deploying brand new features that's from scratch. And so I have to stay up to date with what's happening at GitHub. I also do public speaking, so I speak at conferences, I do workshop, I go to podcasts, and sometimes I do one-on-one meetings with members in the GitHub community. And so then I gather all that feedback and I meet with product managers to let them know what the community is saying, so they can iterate and build upon the features at GitHub to make it better for you to use. And so the work can sometimes be overwhelming, to be honest, and challenging at times, but I enjoy it a lot more than sitting at a computer and coding all day and scratching my head at the bugs because I didn't see where that colon was. So I definitely enjoy being an advocate more than just being a software engineer because it keeps me engaged, it keeps me focused, and it keeps me learning, to be honest. And so that's just some of the work that I do at GitHub. And so I'm going to turn it over to you now to ask me all the questions you want, because I don't want to talk for the entire time. I can talk, y'all. So if you want the slides, I know that Zane dropped the link in the comment box already. So whatever questions you have, let me know. Here is some resources for you if you want to learn how to be a developer relations advocate that you can find in the slide deck. The top resource I would recommend is the one that I used. I used Getting Started in Developer Relations. It's a book by a developer relations manager, Sam Julian. It costs $12, but I promise you it's worth it. If you send me a DM on Instagram or LinkedIn, I can get it for you, no problem. Just let me know if you want it, and I can gift it to you. But it's an excellent, excellent book for engineers looking to go into developer relations. That's it from me. If you want to keep up with me, definitely follow me on Insta. And now, let me know your questions.
Well, first off, Kadesha, I just want to say that was an amazing presentation. Not only was it just like visually, like it was really pretty, but also as someone who's personally interested in developer advocacy, because I'm still looking for roles. This was also really cool to just understand the different facets of developer relations, and also just learning about your personal experience is really great.
Awesome. I'm so happy it was useful. I just put together something short for this because I really wanted to spend a lot of time answering questions. And I'm happy that you learned something. And pretty presentations is my forte.
All right, so one question we have is, how do I get started with building a social presence? How do I say start a podcast or start creating videos?
Ooh, so if you want to start creating or like start building a social presence, I would say choose one platform. So when I was starting out 2 years ago, I chose Instagram because on Instagram, I can go live, I can do carousel posts, which means I can have like text on a picture that people can read. I can do videos. And so because it offered all those different ways for me to learn how to do things, I chose Instagram. Instagram is a very unusual platform for developer advocates to use, but that's the one I use and that's the one I enjoy. So choose either podcasting or video. Choose one of the two. Don't do both when you're starting out because you get overwhelmed. And so once you choose which one you want to do, let's say you decide to do video. Where do you want to host your videos? So what's the platform that you watch all the time? If it's YouTube Shorts, maybe you can start doing videos on YouTube Shorts, right? And if you want to start creating videos, the only thing you need is this. This is an iPhone. We all have very smartphones. I also have an Android. If you have an Android, use the Android as well. I started creating videos with a Samsung S9, which was a very old phone, but that's the phone I had and that's the phone I use. There is a camera, it has a speaker. There are also free editing apps. You can also use Canva or CapCut, or my favorite one is called, I can't believe it's my favorite and I forgot what it's called, InShot. InShot is the free editing app that I use. Choose a free editing app, get your phone. When the sun is out, go in the sun so there's light hitting your face nice and bright, and start talking. My advice to you is to choose the topic that you want to talk about, break it down into like 4 or 5 pieces, and that's 5 video for you to go ahead and film and have a good time. So start small, choose one platform, use what you have, and keep going. Because when you start posting videos, you probably will get like 0 views. Do not let that discourage you. Keep going. Remember, the goal and the focus is to build upon your experience, like get better at video or get better at speaking. And so if you're consistent, they will come.
Nice. One kind of follow-up question I have with that is, do you have any recommendations for thinking about the kind of content that you want to start creating? Because, for example, if my experiences in like Python development, how would you recommend thinking about like topics that would create like engaging content for people to watch? Like, should I talk about like things to do with the language? Also because, you know, there's a lot of content out there, so it's, you know, I think you'd want to create something that's a bit more unique and engaging rather than, you know, a topic that people have like kind of delved into already.
I hear you. And I would say, so like, for example, when I started out, I really wanted to get better at web development because I was a front-end software engineer at a bank and I wanted to improve how I spoke about that. So I decided to focus on JavaScript, right? Well, I decided to focus on web development, and that includes HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And so I'm just like, okay, I'm going to create beginner content about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And that's what I did. So figure out what you want to do or figure out what you want to learn. So because I wanted to improve how I spoke about and use those particular technologies, that's what I decided to post about. And so if for Python, for example, you want to learn how to do machine learning with Python, you can create a whole series on how to do machine learning with Python. And the first step would be to learn Python, right? And learning Python can either be like a 1 or 2 video series, and then you move into the machine learning aspect of Python. And like when people say, oh, say, if you want to learn more about Python, go to these resources, but we're going to focus on machine learning. So when it comes to figuring out what you want to focus your content on, think about what you want, because initially it's just going to be you and the camera. So until you have people like asking questions and giving you feedback, it's just going to be you and the camera. And so you want to make sure that you are actively engaged in the content that you're producing. So do you want to learn something new in Python? Is there something that you know really, really well when it comes to Python that you can just get started right now, like hash out 5 topics and start teaching immediately? Is there something that you're curious about Python? Did the recent Python release just come out with something amazing that you want to talk about? Just so like think about what you want to get from Python and tap into that for your content.
Nice. And if anyone's looking for inspiration, they'll just check out Kadesha and you'll have something to kind of get some inspiration there.
Absolutely. I have a lot of videos and content, especially on Insta.
Let's see. Someone's saying, in content creation, I usually get burnt out really fast, even if I produce high quality content. Do you have any like recommendations for that?
Same. So because I was working full time as a software engineer, and then I moved over into developer relations early last year, and I posted consistently, literally every day or mostly every day for 1.5 to 2 years. And so I remember when I got my role at GitHub, I was tired and I stopped posting. And I literally just started posting again like 2 weeks ago because I was exhausted and I was completely burnt out. And so if you've been creating video or content online and you're burnt out, take a break because people will be there. Just do an announcement. Hey, I'm really tired. I have to take a break from my mental health and to focus on whatever it is that you're going to focus on, and just stop posting. Because when you come back, you'll be rejuvenated, you have more energy, and you'll keep going. But when it comes to burnout and content creation, it's very, 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 very common. And so my advice to you is to have a schedule. So I have a content calendar and I live by that content calendar because it helps me to stay organized. So have a content creation system that helps you to stay organized, and it will kind of, sort of, but not really help with the burnout. And maybe like what I started to do is like, or what I'm actually trying to do is to have a hard stop for work. So because I create a lot of content for work, it's just a wheel that keeps going and it keeps churning. But if I'm gonna try to implement like a hard stop and say, okay, at 7 or 8, I stop working, nothing more. Leave it for the next day. It will be there tomorrow. But when it comes to burnout, I'm also looking for tips, y'all. So if you got anything, let me know.
Nice. Another question is, do I need to get a referral for dev advocate roles? Because I usually don't find them in the job board websites.
That's a good question. A referral will get you very far just for developer advocate roles or for any role for that matter. For my role at GitHub, because I had built relationships with the developer advocates at GitHub and with the GitHub hiring manager, when the role opened up, the GitHub, Rizal Scarlett, she DM'd me. She works at GitHub. She DM'd me and said, hey, Kadesha, you should apply for this role. And I said, okay, girl. And so because of that recommendation, I was able to like not go through the interview process easily. I didn't get any special treatment. I had to do everything the same, but I feel like I had a little, I had more confidence. Let's say that I had a lot more confidence in going through the process. But I wouldn't say you have to get recommendations, but LinkedIn is a great place to look for developer relations role. I forgot what the specific job boards are, but I'll make a list of job boards for developer relations role for you to look at and send it to the team so they can post it in the MLH chat for you to look at later. But there are specific niche job boards that you can look at. And then DevRel Con, the Developer Relations Conference, is a great place to go for beginners because they have a curated job boards for you to look at as well. There are also like Discord and Slack channel that you can join to learn about developer relations role.
Nice. That's awesome. One thing I'll kind of say is, so just before this, we had a AMA with Undead Labs, so they were talking about recruiting practices, and one thing we talked about was how you should talk to people on LinkedIn, or just in general, whether it's like someone who has like a role you're interested in learning more about, like if they are a developer advocate or otherwise, and just try and schedule like a 10-15 minute call just to learn more about them, just so you can learn more about what their job is, and learn more about what kind of role you want within developer relations specifically, because you may not want to do, you may, like Kadesha was saying, may want to do something more on the product side or maybe more the content creation side, so it'll help you kind of understand where you want to go.
Exactly, or community management or program management. There's a lot of options within the developer relations space. And I will say, like in 2021, when I said, okay, I think I want to go into DevRel, I spoke to a lot of advocates in the community to get an idea of what they do in their day-to-day, how I can get to where they are, and to also build that relationship and that initial connection, right? So definitely tap into LinkedIn, okay? Tap into Twitter. Twitter's still a thing, okay? So a lot of advocates live on Twitter, and so you can just look up developer advocates, send them a DM. Most of us are very nice and very kind and love to talk to you. So reach out to us and let us know that you're interested in developer relations, and you'd love to chat to us about what it's like. We're very open to it.
Nice. Another question is, I'm still a third-year student, so should I go for software engineering roles or DevRel? I want to be in DevRel, but I was thinking if software engineering roles would give me more experience and help me be more prepared for DevRel roles.
So I would encourage you to get a role as a software engineer first, even for like 1 to 2 years, just so you know what it's like to work professionally as a software engineer. So being in school and learning about technology and building projects and being in the trenches, it's not the same as working on an enterprise level product and maintaining that product, updating that product, and keeping it going. So like building a product and maintaining a product two different things. Additionally, there's a lot that you're going to learn in your first role about software engineering that you will need to know as a developer advocate. Because as DAs, we talk to from like just push my first code to GitHub to I've been coding for 25 years. That's the breadth of people that we're talking to as developer advocates. And if you don't have that experience of what it's like to be a software engineer in a professional setting, they're gonna call you out. They're gonna call you out and they're gonna say, you don't know what you're talking about. Why should I listen to you? And then you lose that credibility. So definitely I would encourage you to get some internships and then get a job and then pivot into DevRel, because also when you start applying for those advocacy roles, remember you're not the only person applying for them. Experienced engineers are applying. And so you want to make yourself a little bit more competitive. And so I'd encourage you to get a job. And while you're getting a job, do a little blogging, do a little blogging, do a little podcasting, go to some events, try to speak at some conferences to build up that a little bit of a content portfolio. And that's my best advice for you.
Nice. Last question is, we don't have DevRel conferences in Morocco, sad face.
I'm so sorry.
Are there any good DevRel conferences that might be like virtual or global?
I thought DevRel was global. I know they have DevRel all over the world, so like even in Europe, even in different places. But honestly, I don't know. That's something I would have to definitely look up to see like where are the developer conferences and developer relations specific conferences that you can go to. But that's definitely a sad face for sure.
And one last note from 4-4. This is unrelated, but I really love your glasses.
Oh, thank you. I got these earlier this year and I really, 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 really love them.
So as always, keep putting your questions in chat. One question I have is, Kadesha, what's, I guess, like the most fun or most interesting kind of project you've worked on as like a developer advocate?
Ooh, the most fun project I've worked on as a developer advocate, I would say, is my I started a series called GitHub Tips and Tricks where I show unknown little workarounds in GitHub, and I've really, really been enjoying that series. It's short form though, but I still love it so much. And I'm planning to start another series, which is GitHub for Beginners. That's something I'm super excited about because I find that there isn't a lot of like beginner GitHub content. Like, this is my very first time using GitHub. What do I do? And so I would love to improve that experience. And so look out for that content. It's going to live on YouTube. It's going to be longer form. And that's something I'm really excited about. I also just did a presentation on GitHub Actions. So I got a chance to learn more about Actions and talk about it. And that was also really fun. Yeah. And now I'm like doing stuff with code spaces, Copilot, not so much because I'm afraid of the robots. I'm kidding. But I like to spread my wings in the areas that are not so like hyped up. And plus we have Roselle for Copilot, which she's doing amazing.
Nice. Don't think we have any new questions. One question I have is, are there any common like pitfalls you've seen for people who are trying to get into DevRel, whether it's like common mistakes you see with people trying to get into content creation, or whether it's like with trying to apply to roles in DevRel?
I would say one of the common misconceptions I notice is, oh, you just post this online. It's so easy for you. Your job is so easy. I'm here coding all day. Well, guess what? I'm coding, I'm speaking, I'm posting, I'm in the comments looking for feedback, I'm in the community talking, I'm traveling to conferences. Like, we're doing a lot and the work isn't easy. It can actually be really exhausting, especially with the constant travel and the constant having to be on for these type of engaging presentations. But I will say another misconception I hear is that, oh, you're not a real developer, you're just there to be the face of the product. And so while we are kind of the public face of the product. We're also software engineers and we're also software developers. So we can actually go to a company and build on the product, because that's what we do as for a living, right? It's just that we're software engineers who love to talk to people. We're software engineers who love to make pretty presentations. We're software engineers who love to, teach and engage with the public audience. And so those are some of the misconceptions I've seen in the wild about being in DevRel.
Yeah, I think I've definitely seen that, people being a little bit elitist with
Yes.
developer term, which I think anyone can really do it. Anyone who's passionate. But yeah, I think that also kind of goes with what you were saying before, which was preferably getting like software engineering experience first. You can say,
yes,
like, I have receipts, like I have experience.
Exactly.
Someone's asking, is my experience as a content creator and a Google developer student club leader helpful in getting DevRel roles? Content creator, I'd imagine, is very helpful.
Yes, content creator is definitely very helpful, and even being a Google developer student club leader is also helpful, because you not only know how to manage a community, you know how to put on events for that community, you know how to respond appropriately. You learn a lot of community management skills that you're not even aware of that you're learning. And so those two experiences, coupled with like a year or two in software engineering roles, creme de la creme. As long as you keep building that content as a creator, you'll be fine. And one thing I must say is, one of the questions I get a lot is, are developer advocates paid the same as software engineers? And the answer is yes, because we are software engineers. A lot of advocacy roles actually pay a little bit more than engineering, because we do more than code. We're also talking, and we're the public face of the company. So that's one thing I wanted to answer too.
Nice. Another question about a comment is, one thing I've learned is, if you hear someone say your job must be easy, that job turns out to be extremely hard.
Yes, 1,000%, 1,000%. Yes. While DAing is definitely fun, being in developer relations is definitely fun, because I get to engage with the community a lot and I love it. It's definitely challenging at times, because you have different requests from different, like for example, I have different requests from different PMs about different projects that they would like me to be participating in to help develop. And so it can be overwhelming, because in addition to that, you also have conferences to go to, you have this live stream, you have this blog post that you need to get out, you have this, video I need to post on social media. So it's definitely a balancing act, and can be a little exhausting, but I find it fun.
Nice. They also follow up with, does it get sort of nervous on the job, especially if you're talking with someone prominent in the industry?
Yes. Oh my goodness, yes. So for example, GitHub has GitHub Code Spaces, right? Which is a cloud editor. You can do everything in Code Spaces that you can do locally on your machine. And so I don't know a lot about GitHub Code Spaces. I don't know a lot about coding in the cloud. And I have a few talks coming up about containerization and dev environments and dev containers, and I'm just like, okay, this is going to be a little bit scary, but the good thing is my job allows me to learn and to present what I learned to the community. And so yeah, it's definitely scary, especially if I'm talking to somebody who is well known and very prominent, or especially if I'm talking to somebody who has like 20 plus years in the industry. I'm just like, oh my god, I didn't know anything. What can I possibly teach you? Turns out you can teach them a lot, because having that beginner mindset goes a long way. Because as veterans in the industry, sometimes they forget what it's like to be new to a technology. And so bringing your unique perspective, it's perfect. It works out. So I try to just hop over the fear and do it anyway.
Yes, I think that's some great advice. Another question about a comment. Someone says, just create an account on Polywork and it's awesome, way better than LinkedIn.
Awesome, yeah. Yeah, I love Polywork because it's literally a chronological way for you to track the content that you're doing across different platforms. So it's no longer like, oh, I have to go to my Instagram, I have to go to my Twitter, I have to go to my LinkedIn, I have to go here. As long as you upload it to Polywork, everything will be there for you to see in just like on just like one long sheet. And you can be like, oh my goodness, look at all the work I've done. This is amazing. It's like when I was creating this slide, I was just like, oh my goodness, I did a lot of work. And this isn't even everything. This isn't even everything I did. And I did all these things on my own because as a result of being a technical content creator. And so I was just like, wow, I was literally a developer advocate before being a developer advocate. And so like Polywork, I got all these links from Polywork. And so it just helped me to see my curated experience, and it's awesome. Yes, it's definitely stacked. And this isn't even everything.
Alright. Someone else asks, why is it so hard to get into the GitHub Campus Experts program?
Oh, that is an excellent question. I don't know. I do know that it's pretty competitive. If you send me a DM on LinkedIn, find me on LinkedIn, send me a DM, and I can try to connect you with somebody from the GitHub education team to talk to you about what you're experiencing.
Nice. Let's see, you still have some time, so feel free to put more questions in the comments. Just one question from my end is, Kadesha, compared to where you started, is there anything you've looked back on as like, I guess like a big lesson that you've learned as a developer advocate when it comes to like developing or just working professionally, or it's like networking and that kind of thing?
So are you asking what's the biggest lesson I've learned? Wait, what are you asking?
Or I guess the biggest lesson you've learned in terms of being successful as a content creator or as someone networking.
The biggest lesson I've learned is that consistency goes a long way. Which is why I'm trying to stress it so much, because when you start posting content online, it's very scary, because you're just, I know for me, I was just like, I don't know anything. How am I going to teach people? And I don't know anything. As a software developer, I constantly feel like I don't know anything because there's so much to know. And so one of the biggest lessons I learned is that consistently goes a long way in not only becoming a better content creator, but in becoming better at editing, better at time management, better at speaking. And it also exposes you to the hidden job market and the hidden opportunity market. Everything I've done, like everything I did on my own to get my role, I did it because somebody sent me a DM. Hey, Kadesha, we love your content and would love to have you on the podcast. Would love to have you speak at this event. Would love to have you do insert thing here. And so because of my consistency, I was able to attract those opportunities, and I was able to build up a whole portfolio that landed me a role at GitHub. So that is definitely my biggest lesson for you. Stay consistent. If you have one person in your audience that consistently comments on every single one of your posts, build a relationship with them, because that is your power user. Like that is your power person that is cheering you on from their computer. And so that is my biggest lesson. And also my biggest tip for you is to remain consistent.
Awesome. Comment from someone says, thank you, Kadesha, for all this info. Gonna get inspired and work to be a great content creator.
Yay, that's awesome. You should definitely connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter or Insta. I would love to, help you out however I can.
Yeah, I think I'm honestly gonna do that too, just because I've been pretty inspired by this.
Yeah, definitely.
I connect with a lot of things that you're talking about. Like the first hackathon that I mentored, I was like, am I going to be a good mentor / judge? Like, do I really know anything about hackathons and development? I don't know what I can really teach anyone.
Exactly.
And now I've been to like 50 or so. So I think you just got to take it one step at a time. And like you said, be consistent about it.
Exactly. The important thing is to start. That's it. The important thing is to start. And it's just like, I look at it like this. I'm gonna be scared anyway, so why not be scared and do it? At least there's a reason to be afraid instead of just all these made up things in my head.
See, someone's asking, how do you fill space for low audience participation that happens a lot, like I host an event and no one turns up? So how do I get the word out? 1, and 2, in that kind of event, how do I fill the time if there's very little participation?
Oh, I'm so sorry that seems that's happened a lot to you. How do you get the word out? You can get the word out for free. Twitter, TikTok is great. Go on, like Hacker Noon, go on Reddit and post it. Sometimes if you can build a relationship with a content creator, maybe like a smaller content creator who's just starting to get out, you can say, hey, I'm having this event for developers. I would love for you to talk about it on your channel. That would be so good for me. And see if they'll be willing to do it. Some creators will say yes. Most creators will say no, so be prepared for that. So that's how you can get the word out about your event. And even if you're working at a company, don't be afraid to talk about what you're doing, on the side, especially if it relates to work. Say, hey, I have this event going on. I would love for you to join. Even if you're at school, hey, I have this event going on. I would love for you to come. One thing to learn how to do is to advocate for yourself, because if you keep quiet, nobody's going to know what the awesome stuff that you're doing. And so those are some ideas and tips I have for you. And so if nobody comes to the event, what I would do is leave. I would go home and I would cry and I would have some ice cream, and then I would keep it moving and try to figure out, okay, how can I get the word out more so that there is more participation. Maybe it's a thing where you create a meetup for the event. That way you can see a list of people who said they were going to come to the event. And so if nobody shows up, you can follow up with those people and say, hey, why, I thought you were going to come here. Can you tell me why you decided not to turn up? I'm curious and I would love to learn how I can be better. So if you have a list of the people that were supposed to come, definitely contact them and see what happened. Because something could have happened. They could have heard something. They could have misunderstood something. We don't know, but try to figure out what happened and what you can do to improve upon it.
Nice. I like the idea of going home eating that ice cream. Sometimes you need to process your emotions like that, and that's fine.
Exactly.
I'm not sure what kind of event in particular that they're talking about, but in terms of like hackathons or club meetups, like Adesha said, consistency is key. So if you're doing a club kind of event where it's like more like meetings, just coming every week and making it consistent so that people know like you're at this place at this time doing this activity, that does a lot for you. And it also just there can be some positives in having a smaller number of people at an event. For example, you get more of those like one-on-one interactions. So there are different kinds of things you can do compared to like if you had like a big group that you had to work with. So depending on what you're doing, like I know when I first really got started in programming was I started a programming club at my high school when I was in high school, just because we had like 2 CS classes that were pretty mid. So I just wanted a place for us to do more. And there just weren't really many people interested. But eventually I just got a small group and we started attending hackathons, and that led me to where I am today. So
there you go.
It really just depends on how you make use of that.
Yeah.
And some people asking about your Twitter. I believe I put it in the chat. It's that lady Dev.
Yes, it's that lady Dev everywhere. On LinkedIn, I'm Kadesha Shakur though, but everywhere else, it's that lady Dev. Oh, I think GitHub, I'm just Kadesha Shakur too. Sorry. I should change that.
Hey, that's the thing with consistency. It keeps coming up. So
trust me, I've learned these lessons the hard way. And so I'm just like, well, you know what? If I have one name everywhere, people can just plug it in and find me everywhere. That's also good for branding, right? You just brand yourself across the internet as, I just brand myself across the internet as It's That Lady Dev, and that's what I am. It's That Lady Dev, the lady developer.
Someone's asking what to probably work. It's the same thing. It's That Lady Dev. It's That Lady Dev. Also, you're muted.
Yep, I'm on mute. Yeah, it's polywork.com/It's That Lady Dev. I'll send it to Zane so he can post it. Yeah, It's That Lady Dev everywhere. I see someone said, It's That Lady Dev is such a hilarious name. I know. So when I just started learning how to code, I'm a non-traditional engineer, by the way. I went to a year-long boot camp to make my change. And so when I just started learning how to code, I would post on Twitter very regularly, very consistently. And initially I was It's Lady Katie. And I remember one day somebody said, oh my goodness, this lady developer is amazing. And I was just like, yup. I'm changing my name to It's That Lady Dev, and that's how It's That Lady Dev was born.
I love the boldness. Like, it's That Lady Dev.
Yeah, it's That Lady Dev.
Yeah. I guess to end it off, could you talk a bit more about how you kind of got into? Because you mentioned like you recommend people kind of get into a software engineering role first, and then kind of pivot into DevRel. How did you go from like a boot camp into kind of software engineer?
Ooh, that's a whole story, Zane. But the short of it is I went to a boot camp. It was so intense. I cried every day, and I'm not even exaggerating. So before this career change, I worked as a social worker, and I had no idea about what coding was. And I discovered coding on Instagram. Somebody posted on Instagram that they learned how to code, and they started earning $1 bajillion. And I was just like, I want $1 bajillion too. And so I opened up the browser and started looking at coding. And so I went to a year-long boot camp. I won't mention the boot camp I went to because I don't recommend it. It was a whole year. And so the same year, I received a scholarship to go to the Grace Hopper Conference, which was happening in Orlando, Florida, at the place I worked at. Like, I worked at a conference place that the government owned, and that's where I worked. That's where the conference was, and I was like, perfect. And so I went to the boot camp. I think like for 9-10 months, I focused on the boot camp. And then for an entire month, for all of September, I built a project. I built a full stack budgeting platform. Don't ask me to post it because I don't know if I don't think it's working anymore because I haven't looked at it in like 3 years. But I built a full stack budgeting platform, so I had something to speak about. Updated my resume with the little experience I had as a bootcamp student, and also as I was working as like a teaching assistant at the bootcamp. So I slapped that on my resume. I went to the conference and I lived in the conference hall. I spoke to so many recruiters, so many hiring managers. And thankfully, on the first day of the conference, I got a job offer. I got a job offer with Northwestern Mutual. And so I moved to Wisconsin and I worked there for 2.5 years. And it was hard and it was amazing and it was intense and I learned so much. And so that's kind of how I got my first role in software engineering. To get your first role, don't neglect conferences, don't neglect Twitter, and don't neglect networking. That's all I gotta say because we're out of time.
All right. Let's see. I think that's pretty much it for questions. Any concluding thoughts, Kadesha?
Concluding thoughts is, if you want to get into developer relations, definitely get Sam Julian's book, Getting Started in Developer Relations. I can't recommend it enough. If you would like a copy, send me a message on LinkedIn or Instagram. Hey Kadesha, I was in MLH stream, and I would love that book you spoke about. I'm happy to get it for you, no problem. And if you do start when you do start creating content, stay consistent. Consistency goes a long way, and start using your phone. It's free because you have it in your hand, and just post it. Don't worry about being perfect. Don't worry about knowing everything. Just post what you know and keep going.
Nice. And I believe there's one last question here. How exactly, and I imagine you could go on and on about this, how exactly do you speak to people at conferences? Like, what do you talk to them about?
That's actually a really good question. So I'll give you an example. This week I was at a conference in Philly, and I spoke about GitHub Actions. And my talk was about there's an action for that, exploring the possibilities of GitHub Actions. And so it was an introduction to Actions, how to get started, looking at the marketplace, and then I did some CI/CD demos, and then I sent an action with I use GitHub Actions to send a text message. You can also use Actions to send to like order a pizza, but I didn't have time to do that one. And so that's kind of what I speak about at conferences. So I'm literally doing talks, like I'm one of the speakers talking, and that's what I talk about. And so when you're a developer advocate, you have to try to find unique and creative ways to talk about your company's product without talking about your company's product, because then it will be seen as a pitch. And so that's kind of how it goes.
Nice. With that, I think that's all the questions.
Cool.
Nice. Thank you so much for coming on, Kadesha. This has been really educational, and yeah, it's been really entertaining as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Yep. See you all around.